Hey, fifth grade, it's Miss Bishop, and we're going to be talking about comparing perimeter area and volume today. So as we're going through the next slide, I really want you to think about what are we measuring when we're doing perimeter, what are we measuring when we're doing area, and what are we measuring or we're doing volume. So keeping in mind that perimeter is a linear measurement, it's a straight path around an object such as a rectangle, such as a square, an octagon, anything that has straight sides. And then you have your area, which is measured using square units, and you're measuring the amount of space a flat object takes up. So, for example, how much space a garden takes up, or how much space a basketball court takes up. So that space or that square measurement there, square units of measurement. And then of course you have your volume, which is the amount of cubic units that will fill an actual space. So we're talking about something that's not flat, something that is raised, has a height measurement to determine the cubic units inside of something. So we're going to look at this next slide, and we're going to look at 3 different scenarios, and your job is going to be to figure out, is it perimeter, is it area, is it volume, what are we trying to figure out here? Okay. All right, so let's look at this first problem right here, and it says Aiden measured his wall to determine the amount of paint he needed to cover his wall. When he measured, it was 10 feet long and 12 feet wide. How much paint is he gonna need to buy? So when I'm picturing this in my head, I'm thinking, okay, well, Aiden has a wall, right? He has a wall, and of course, and the length is 10 feet, and the height or the width is 12 feet. So we're talking one wall in his bedroom. And then the question says, well, how much paint should Aiden buy? So when I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking, well, if I'm going to paint a wall, that means I'm going to be covering that wall, right? All that paint is going to be covering that wall. So what do you think that is? Do you think that's area? Do you think that's perimeter? Or is that volume? What are we actually measuring there? I'll give you a second to think. Okay, so if you said area, you're right. Okay, so this is measuring the area of our wall, because we need to know how much paint is needed to cover that wall. So let's look at the next situation. This is about Tony. So it says Tony was building a rectangular playground. It measured 24 feet long, 1 foot tall, and 14 feet wide. How much sand does she need? Oh, that should be a he. Haha. He need to fill the sandbox. Okay. So what I'm imagining here is I'm imagining a sandbox, right? And it's rectangular, so I know it's a rectangular shape, and it's 24 feet long, and it's 14 feet wide. But then there's a depth to it, meaning that it's also 1 foot tall. And I'm just going to kind of draw this so that you can see. So there's also some sort of depth. Now this isn't perfect, and my drawings are not perfect, so I apologize for those drawings. But there's also a depth or a height to it as well. So we're thinking, okay, 1 foot tall here. Actually, do we have an eraser here? Nope, we don't. It's okay. All right, so excuse my drawing, but you're thinking of a rectangular prism, which means we're taking a space and we're filling it with sand. So that means we have to figure out the cubic volume of that. So if you were thinking volume for this, then you were thinking absolutely right. So we are figuring out the volume for this one. All right, so let's look at this last scenario here. And this last scenario says Lori is measuring a picture she just colored to frame. The length of the picture is 3 inches and the width is 5 inches. What is the distance around the picture frame? So if she has a picture that measures 3 inches wide and has a length, 3 inches long and 5 inches wide. What is the distance around that picture frame? Okay, so in this case, I'm picturing in my head, because, oops, excuse me. So I'm picturing in my head that I need to draw a picture frame here. I'm drawing a picture frame here, right? And my picture frame is 3 inches long and 5 inches wide. And then it says, what is the distance around my picture frame? So obviously that's telling me that this situation is calling for the perimeter. So that's how we can kind of look at all of these scenarios. So when you're thinking of area, we're always thinking, am I covering the space? Am I figuring out the number of square units inside to cover that space? When you're thinking of volume, we should be thinking about filling that space. And when we're thinking about perimeter, we're thinking about, okay, well, how many units is it going to take me to get around that perimeter? Okay, so now that we know that each of these is area, perimeter, and volume, how do we actually figure out, well, how do we calculate perimeter, area, and volume? So we know that this first problem with Aiden painting his wall was area. So what we need to remember about area is length times width. So if I know the length and I know the width of my rectangle, I can multiply those two numbers to figure out my area. So when I do my length times width, that's 10 feet times 12 feet. Now 10 feet times 12 feet is going to be 120 square feet. So to answer this question, how much paint should Aiden buy? He should be buying 120 square feet of paint. And when you buy paint, that actually will give you a measurement on the paint. It'll tell you how many square feet that gallon of paint or that quart of paint or that pint of paint will actually cover. Okay? All right, so Tony was building a rectangular playground. So remember Tony's playground. And remember, when we're talking about volume, we're talking about filling that space. So volume, and the best way to figure out the volume, the cubic volume, is multiplying your length times your width times your height. Okay, so in this case, our length is 24 feet, our width is 14 feet, and our height is 1 foot. So to get this answer, we would have to do length times width times height. So 24 times 14 is 336, and then 336 times 1 is still 336. So that means that this playground is going to have 336 cubic feet of sand. Okay? And then finally, our last situation, remember, was perimeter. And when we're finding the perimeter, we are adding all of our sides. In this case, we are doing a picture frame, and we know that picture frames are mostly rectangular, and it said that this was rectangular. So we have our length plus our length plus our width plus our width. So we're going to add 3 inches plus 3 inches plus 5 inches plus 5 inches, and adding all of those inches together is 16 inches. Okay, so now that we've talked a little bit about the situations, in the next video we're going to talk about, well, how can we think about this on a different level? How can we apply this knowledge to a different area and perimeter problem? All right.